Well, welcome to the fun and mentals of real estate. We're here with Michelle Perry from Triad Financial. She's our financial advisor. She's giving us a lot of great advice on organizing our life. And we are here to try to figure out this next phase of life. I'm your host, Angela Dillmon, here with Keller Williams Realty Chesterfield, and this is my wealth building partner,
Glen Calvin with Gill Mortgage.
All right.
And we've learned so much from you, Michelle, and I just thank you so much. It's great insights.
It is, but we have a question of the day.
Yes.
Our question is, when you do retire, you stop working, maybe you're forced to retire, right? Or you want to retire and you're like, oh, I can't. Or you retired and 2 years later you go, money's like super tight. Like, how do you help people with this? Because I know as a financial advisor, this is one of the biggest parts of your job is to try to help people figure out, how do I quit working every day? Because it's going to happen.
And the plans
right?
can change and situations change. I think right now, dealing with this inflationary pressure that we've got now, it's really harder on older people.
And if you're like me, I'm 62. All right. So I'm already going in my head. If I had X amount and I wanted to stop working now, that'd be one thing. But 20 years from now, that cost of living is going to double. So one of the first questions you ask people? How do you start this conversation?
Yeah, so hopefully way before that point, there's a better strategy in place. We don't get there, but if it happens, we adjust. But when I start working with people, the whole goal is to align money to, money just gives us options, right? Like that's
Right.
the whole thing. We want to leverage money early on so we can maintain a lifestyle that we're accustomed to all the way through the end of life. So one of the questions I ask early on when I'm working with people is, when's the first time in your life that you realized money had value?
Ooh, that's a really great question.
When's the first time in your life did you realize?
Let's see. First time in my life I realized money had value was 16 years old, and I had to start putting gas in the car. And you needed $5 worth of gas for the weekend, and that was a lot of money back then, showing my age, I know. And you had to pay insurance, like for the car, somebody had to pay the insurance. So even though I didn't have to buy the car when I started driving, I had to put gas in, and I really realized, wow, if I don't have the $5 plus money to go out and hang out and go to the McDonald's or whatever, that was the big deal at the time. You weren't going out.
You were like, finding plotters or what?
Oh yeah, you could you could still return bottles back then. Get cash for them. You did little odd jobs. Hey mom, you need me to paint the patio set this summer. And then got a job. I got my first job because of that. So started teaching guitar and taught guitar lessons out of my house.
Nice.
So
I never knew that.
That's
interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. Yeah. And then
What did you get for a guitar lesson? I'm curious.
$5 for half an hour.
That's exactly
it's just my weekend gas money.
the same amount I paid my cousin Tim to teach me. For me, it was much different. Just the way I grew up, my parents were very generous and loving towards me. And I didn't really think about it until I rented my first apartment. And I want to say maybe it was $500 a month. And I looked at that $6,000 is what I owed. That was such a big number.
Right. So how does this give you insight into people when you ask this question?
Well, that's where our values come from, and it doesn't change. Our earnings change, right? And our partnerships change and point of reference changes, but we don't forget that, right? You remember that's
I still remember.
That's right. And there's always that point of reference. So aligning money towards goals throughout our lifetime is important. But like you said, life happens, and we get to retirement, and we want to have that plan in place, but we get a lot of free time in retirement. It's really hard to recover if we overspend those first 3 years of retirement. So
okay, wait a minute now. So if I'm 3 years into retirement and I realize I've really spent too much money and now it's super tight. So how do you have a tip for that? How can I avoid that from happening?
So I just did this yesterday with a couple. They're retiring in March, and I sent them literally, it's like a spreadsheet, and we're going to proactively talk about replacing their 40-hour work week. Proactively talk about, you had a 40-hour work week. Now what are you going to do? Everybody says, I'm going to play golf, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to do this. that's maybe 10 hours.
Right.
Right.
There's a whole lot of time.
I was gonna
left
garden
over.
or whatever. Yeah, 10 hours.
So we just have to be realistic and what does that look like? And, is that together time or are you single or what does that look like? But let's be realistic and let's be proactive. It can start 3 years ahead of retirement. Maybe you don't have 3 years ahead of retirement to have that conversation, but if you don't have hobbies, we probably need to start those in advance.
Wait, because even golf costs money.
Right.
I mean, my brother's retired. He paints on the side.
Yeah.
It's like
a lot of people want to travel, and that's really
golf.
expensive.
Travel, that's
Really
very
expensive.
expensive.
Right.
Right. So you actually time block a 40-hour week and figure out what I'm going to do.
It doesn't have to be repetitive every week.
Right.
If we're going to travel, we're going to set that budget annually. And if there's going to be big travel and domestic travel or, family lives nearby, we're going to try to make that realistic versus I just want to travel. And that looks a lot different than I'm going to travel this, and this in the first 2 to 3 years. So we get in that habit.
Plus you start shopping online all the time. Right, or going out to eat every single day, which might be in your budget, but if you don't have a budget, it might blow the budget. And
we just want to adapt a lifestyle that we can maintain and be realistic.
All right, so I should probably start this conversation. If you're a youngin who's more in their 40s and 50s, something you should start thinking about, like your retirement years, but you might want to start asking your parents. If they haven't retired yet, what in the world are they? Yeah. Because you know what? That can be some parents' plan is to go live with their kids, but their kids don't know it. So maybe it is a conversation that you should have sooner rather than later, right?
You only think about that number, what I need to live on per month and kind of work backwards from that because I would think I've got savings, I've got a 401k, I'm going to get Social Security. I'm not sure when I'm going to take it. So I'm going to think, well, I need X amount to live on when I retire.
So what's the kind of rule of thumb off your investments? Like if you have a certain amount of investments, is there a rule of thumb on how much percentage you should be taking a year because who knows how long you're going to live too, right? So
so there is a rule, a withdrawal rate. So if you have a 401k or a bucket of money, you want to try to stay under 5%, so 4.5% or less, so you can maintain the principal and hopefully grow that, percentage back with if your risk tolerance allows for that. But there's typically.
What did you tell me about Social Security when you should start taking it? You got a great tip on that.
Well, I would customize it to each person, obviously.
Of course.
No, Michelle told me you tell me when you're going to die.
So you want to start taking Social Security.
Yes, that's the easy answer. Not always. No,
right.
Yes.
Right.
My dad paid into it all his life. He started taking it in July when he turned 70 because he wanted to get the maximum, and he passed away that October.
I did do the math on that. I mean, because we're starting to look at it because we're getting to be that age, and it seemed to me at 65 and 8 months, between 65 and 8 months and 70, you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't just go ahead and take it, even though at 70 you may get a little bit more. So if do the math on it, and I'm sure Michelle has done the math on it. Like
we have nice software that helps us plan and maximize, when it is best for each person. You do get a nice bonus if you leave it, but there's no real benefit after 70. So that's why they say that until 70.
And I think there's a rule too. With my mom, we dealt with this that when you get to a certain age, you have to start taking so much out of your IRA.
Yeah. So let me just clarify on the Social Security from full retirement age to 70, you get an 8% bonus per year up until age 70, and then the RMD required minimum distribution, what you're asking about, at age 73, there is a requirement to take it out of IRA, traditional IRAs.
But you take it out of the IRA. You
don't have to just spend it though, right?
Correct. You do have to pay taxes on the portion that comes out.
Oh, that's right.
You can move it into like a brokerage account.
You can reinvest it, basically.
But you don't have to spend it.
It's funny, the theme for these last 3 podcasts is so clear to me that if you just go into this willy-nilly without a plan, you're going to cost yourself a lot of money.
Right.
And it's so important to get with somebody like Michelle or Michelle, because I highly recommend her to plan this out and to be forward thinking about it.
And this is where the real estate portion kind of comes into play too, because if you have invested in your home and it's time to resize or downsize, you can eliminate a lot of overhead, because I know a lot of people can get stuck at my age in the big house with the, the lawn care and the utilities and the high real estate taxes, but they're so comfortable. Your house may even be paid off, or you think, I'm not gonna sell my house now when interest rates are 7 and I'm sitting on a 3 or a 2. But what you don't understand is that there's so much equity. I mean, Americans have more equity now in their homes than they've ever had, that most downsizers or resizers actually go buy something and they could get completely out of debt. They sell their home, they go buy one, and then sell theirs, pay it off, and they're like, wow, I don't have that payment anymore. And now my overhead's lower. My real estate taxes are lower, utilities are lower, the lawn's smaller, or maybe I have no lawn, maybe I have one to the condo, and I've reduced my whole overhead. Now, so most people don't realize that. They think they're going to have to pay more, but they don't.
It's a math problem, right?
They either eliminate or pay way less.
You're at 2.5% on a $300,000 loan. Now I'm at 7%, but I borrowed 50 or 100.
50 or 100. Right. So now, Glenn, what if I'm in this perfect house? It's my dream home, and I don't want to leave it, right? And this was true for my mom. She got into a house where there was no moving her out of it.
So
one way is she couldn't afford that monthly payment anymore. Do I have an option?
Of course, you a couple of them. One is to take from your savings and pay it off, which I don't think is such a great idea, because you lose the interest deduction, and that, you say, Michelle, that savings isn't growing anymore. Another one is to look at maybe a home equity line that you can kind of live off that. Now, the trouble with those, you're going to have to qualify that for every 2 years. The bonus is they're not expensive. And then the third is the reverse mortgage. Which, there was always such a taboo against that. I'm learning a lot about that over the last couple of years. I've started doing these now in my career. They're a great opportunity for a certain person.
Yeah, so this really worked out well for my mom because, she got cash in her pocket. So it's age dependent, not credit dependent. This is one, right? I mean,
there's no credit score, no.
There's no credit score required, and this is a big bonus. You can actually buy a home on a reverse mortgage, by the way.
Right.
So you gotta have some equity. So you gotta have equity.
The way that works is, rather than putting 100% down,
right,
you would put down 60%, 70%.
Right.
And then that 30% you can
borrow.
And
right.
Then instead of making a payment of 30%, it just would go towards that equity.
So it eliminates your house payment, doesn't eliminate taxes. Your real estate does not eliminate your homeowner's insurance.
Right, and there's so many options with it.
It does get rid of that mortgage payment.
And a lot of people don't realize this, you can make that mortage payment and not eat the equity if you don't want to.
That's true.
You can take distributions. And if there's equity left over when you have to move out of it, that equity goes to your heirs. It's not like that.
You can sell a house, pay the loan off, move on.
Now, they're expensive.
Right. Well, they're expensive to initiate, but they're not that much more expensive interest-wise, are they?
No.
No.
Just the fees.
Yeah,
because the fees are going to be paid on the whole amount, not just where you're starting. But it's a great option.
That's okay. I mean, she got cash. She got like 18, 20 grand in her pocket and stopped paying her house payment. And she was able to stay in the home that she loved, that she built. And she didn't really want to move from it.
I've literally seen it.
We were able to keep her there as long as we could.
I've seen it change people's lives.
Yeah, it really can.
Mm-hmm. To go from that apprehension, that worry, to now I'm comfortable where I'm at. I don't have a payment.
Right.
I have to make tax insurance, but I've just got a peace of mind.
Yeah. So you do have options. So we encourage you to talk to Glenn about these different HELOCs and reverse mortgages and see if it's an option either for you or maybe your parents, especially if you're out of state and can't help your parents a lot sometimes. And you can do them in all 50 states, right? I mean, Gil does them.
Yep.
Gil does them everywhere, so it doesn't actually have to be here. Talk to Michelle, figure out when you should take your Social Security, right?
I would say talk to Michelle about
how you can do your investments and get organized.
It all comes into that. I've seen that theme between these 3 podcasts is that organizational aspect, because it's really the foundation, isn't it, Michelle?
Yeah, and that's the power of preparation of 25 documents to help you start organizing, right? So, Michelle, how do they get one of these? Can they just call you?
I think we're going to put my information in the comments. So
yeah, just tell them your number, though.
314-392-3807.
There you go. You can text, or you can text me at 314-277-7713. We'll make sure you get the booklet and get connected to Michelle as well.
And I know this wasn't all about real estate, but I learned so much, and I really appreciate your time and your perspective on this. It's something that might be uncomfortable, but if you're going to ignore it, it's going to cost you a lot of money in the end.
It's time to start talking about it. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next week.